You can hear me. All right. So today we want to discuss about gender roles and gender differences as well. So mainly looking into differences as well as just the mechanism surrounding that aspect. Just coming from those notes that I sent to you on the group. So some of the things that we are going to look at: gender polarization, gender differences, gender typing, as well as costs of gender polarization. All right. Looking at gender polarization, as by Sandra Ben, 1993, explained or expressed that there are three common beliefs about men and women in Western society, and that these beliefs have led to gender polarization. So gender polarization is that aspect of what do you call it? Gender differences, or men are men, women are women, such kind of aspect in its nature. So they believed that, according to Sandra Ben, that men and women in Western societies have these beliefs that lead to gender polarization, that women and men also have basically different psychological and sexual natures, as well as men are superior and dominant gender, as well as gender differences and male superiority are more like natural. In that context, I believe also in African societies, we also view to such extent, or we used to view in such aspect. So gender role stereotypes, which are more like these cultural tendencies to see males and females as how we are, isn't it, psychological and sexually opposites. That is the gender role stereotypes. As we have warm, emotional, dependent, gentle, helpful, mild, patient. And then for men, being seen as independent, competitive, very tough, protective, logical, and competent. But nowadays, it's something else which is quite different. But now also looking at adjustment and androgyny or androgyny, depends with who taught you English in pronunciation. Many psychologists also look upon masculinity and femininity. So these are psychological androgyny. They refer to it as possessing both stereotypical masculine and feminine traits in one person at the same moment in time, like the masculine traits are dominant as well as feminine traits are also dominant, equally dominant. So that is what psychological androgyny or androgyny depends with your pronunciation. So people who are low in this stereotypical masculine and feminine traits are differentiated according to masculinity and femininity. Undifferentiated people seem to encounter distress, while those who are androgynous may be more resistant to stress. So they're saying those people who are who are low in both stereotypical masculine and feminine traits, in terms of like both of them are low, they are like undifferentiated in terms of like they cannot be, what do you call it, separated from both, but in a negative way in terms of the appreciation that may be given, as well as the expression that one is explaining that one may end up, like they are encountering distress situations, and then they say those ones who are psychological androgyny, they are more resistant to stress since they possess two aspects. What is this one? All right. Okay, looking at these androgynous individuals, they tend to be more creative than masculine or feminine typed individuals. In another words, I believe we'll talk about it in, sorry, in pages to come in reference to this aspect. That are people that they say they are psychological androgynous, they are more like, they say men, a group of men is shallow compared to a group of women by themselves. So in other words, they said the combination also is quite productive, a group of women and a group of men combined together. So that's why you end up seeing that psychological androgynous people or androgynous people, they're quite more resistant to stress, or they are a little bit more balanced and independent in their nature. In like what they referred here, are more likely to show a firm sense of who they are and what they stand for. So masculine goes for independence under group pressure to conform, and then feminine, the nurturance of a person, like, you know, the nature, that nature aspect when interacting with babies, or when interacting with some form of, let's say, people or creatures which require, what do you call it, assistance, or interaction with which require care, I mean. So they also feel more comfortable performing a wide range of activities in various different contexts as well. And they have a greater self-esteem and ability to bounce back from failures. Those are some of those aspects that are being experienced. So in all these aspects is trying to express the issue about gender polarization / stereotypical or stereotypes, as well as gender differences and similarities that are being projected as we look into this. So looking at gender differences, looking at cognitive abilities, they always assume that men are more intelligent than women, isn't it? But according to the research, they always say there's less difference between the two, but some may possess extra at this side and others at this side. So which is just one. So at the end of the times, it's just the same, just different specialties as well. So as well as coming back from our historical perspective, as well as some of those traits are still being experienced now, that some women are excluded from deeper world affairs, as well as in deeper in science and in industry. Nowadays, people are trying to be gender sensitive or gender mainstreaming, so that, you know, people get appreciated individually despite of gender classes. So looking into this aspect, and also in industry, in science, if you check most of our theories in psychology, as well as even going through some of these theories, probably in gender studies, that's where you find out some of the theories are written by women, which also made the module to be also looked into, because of the women who wrote what do you call it? Who wrote documents or research, or what do you call it? Empirical evidence and studies when it comes to gender equalities and gender mainstreaming as well, or gender appreciation. So some of those aspects, they were also being looked into. Tests of intelligence, they show no differences in overall intelligence between those genders, isn't it? But only difference in specific skills. Like some, they talk more or they talk better than others. Others, they calculate better than others. That is the difference. But at the end of the times, it's still square. So some of those differences in cognitive abilities, like girls, are somewhat superior to boys in verbal abilities, in verbal fluence, and also ability to generate words that are similar in meaning, like synonyms, spelling, pronunciation, and then foreign languages. In other words, trying to say that women are quite very good with language. Now, also men seem to be what superior in the ability to manipulate visual images in working memory. Working memory, that is the memory that I believe we are using right now as we are conducting our lesson. You're paying attention. You're trying also to associate information and thinking at the very same time. So looking at those aspects, okay, somebody send a message. All right. All right, Mr. Panda, we welcome you. All right, so some of those differences and also looking at males generally obtain higher scores on standardized math tests than females, but female excels in computational abilities in elementary school. That was a research which was conducted in America. Unfortunately, I would say fortunately, you are among some of those people who are going to conduct such researches so that we can also make use of them fluently. And also in looking into this aspect, they're just trying to look at some of those specialized areas where men and women tend to differ, but at the end of the times, their intelligent or cognitive abilities are more or less the same. Like men, when they say the visual spatial images or imagery, it's more like they are finding. Okay, let me give you an example. In architecture, you find it's quite male dominant, even though nowadays women are also jumping in, very competitive in nature as well. But you find out it's more male dominated because it requires that spatial, visual spatial abilities as well as also you're looking into construction, despite the aspect of heavy duties, but there are other offices in construction that can also be occupied by those who don't like heavy duty, but you still find that it's more influenced by presence of men in there. So those are some of those aspects in terms of abilities. And then if you go to media, even though journalism is highly shared men and women, but you find that some of them who do well are women. Now it depends with who you know, especially in the world. But despite of that, just in general sense, we find even news anchors, majority of them, they're always favorably females. Probably is due to the issues of good pronunciation and fluence as well. And also, some of those issues, like some of the differences are morely reflected in social cultural differences in how we were brought up, as well as how our societies appreciate such kind of issues in relation to gender. And then gender differences in social behaviors, as we look at them, they always say women exceed men in extraversion. Like women are more extroverts, right? And men are more like introverts in their nature, like compared to women. Or we say some men are extroverts, but women are more than men, as well as issues of anxiety. They end up experiencing anxiety more. Trust as well as nurturance is also some of those things that also they exceed men, as well as women. Scientifically, they said they are more emotionally expressive and cooperative. Yes, that one I may say yes, because majority of women, they can uh, read catharsis or research more about catharsis, that issues of when one needs to express themselves, either in a counseling or a therapeutic scenario or a venue. And also some point in time in life, you find out if you check with your friends how much you share. And then when it comes to men, that's why they say a group of men, it's shallow because men, they're not that deep supportive. That is their nature. So that's why you find out they are more assertive in their nature, their tough-mindedness, and then they tend to be more competitive. Mm. They tend to be very more competitive. Now looking at all right. Also looking at some of those differences in behavior, like men's friendships with other men, like what I was saying, tend to be shallow and less supportive than women's friendship with other women. Uh, but this is a general perspective in terms of the research which was conducted. Some point in time, maybe probably where we come from, men may tend to be very supportive, maybe, but in general sense, globally, when we're trying to generalize the research in terms of all men involved, that greater number of men, they are found to be more assertive, and then women are found to be more interacting and are very much closer in terms of their way of interacting more than how men do, as well as women are more likely want to combine sex with romantic relationships, you see, whereas men express more interest with casual sex and in multiple sex partners. This also comes back into these issues of extraversion, following issues of trust and nurturance, and then comes to this tough-mindedness, which comes into play. Now looking into gender typing is the words expressing. It's more like the process or processes by which males and females develop psychological gender differences. Looking at the picture, you find the male or the boy child is, getting exposed to military equipment and, the related aspect. And then the girl child is given a doll, that for playing and so on. So that's gender typing. So before I look into gender typing, Do you have any other question that you may need to throw before I move forward? No question. Can you hear me?
Mr. Stanley?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, there's somebody who said my name. Okay, probably maybe in silence, people are satisfied, but you can write under chat if you have any question, then we
Sir,
can. Okay, yes.
I want to ask.
Yes, ask. Yes. What happened to your phone?
She must
Okay.
unmute.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask her to unmute. Probably whilst she's trying to unmute, I send her a text message or a chat message, so maybe probably she can chat, so then we can see what the question is all about. All right, as we proceed whilst waiting for the question to come forward. Yeah, she's unmute. Yes, you can ask.
My question is, when I look to nowadays world,
Uh-huh.
men has, let me just take it.
Sorry, you may proceed.
Let me just type the question.
All right. Okay, you can type the question. You can type the question. Okay, so I'm mute you. Mute you for now. So whilst you're typing the question, gender typing, now that is the process by which females and males are developing those psychological gender differences, where they tend to appreciate the what do you call it, the things that they're being taught in terms of their beliefs, or one sense of being male or female, which also comes with that. So looking at gender typing, some of the biological influences on gender typing, looking at evolutionary psychology, that are all that gender differences were fashioned by the process of natural selection and a response to problems in adaptation, in terms of how we were built, in terms of where we are supposed to fit in or what we are supposed to do. That's what the evolutionary psychologists will express. So these differences may also express through structural differences in males and females, such as the brain, through differences in body chemistry, the hormones, as well as the endocrine system, that is now the hormonal system that tend to influence or direct our bodies in terms of how they react or how they act towards certain events or phenomenon. So those are some of the biological influences in reference to evolutionary. Now looking at brain organization, the question is not yet seen. Probably she forgot or okay, brain organization, like contemporary research, which is now modern research, they also find evidence that brains of men and women are organized somehow or somewhat a little bit differently in terms of their nature, that brains for men, they appear to be highly specialized for certain kinds of visual spatial skills like what I shared. And then women tend to have a better developed verbal skills. When you're using those brain scans, MRI, that MRI scan or CT scan to look at brain areas. So what they do, they give people tasks. to do once they are recording brain actions or brain stimulations, or brain activities. So they look at which areas were stimulated when you were doing A, B, C, and D, or they may give a certain task at the same point in time with ladies there, and then a man is sitting there, and then they will see which brain portion is highly active, and then they will look at that region, what activities are morely centralized around that region, so that they end up discovering what is morely specialized in men, as well as how women also express these areas. And also these issues of belief that sex hormones also the influence how masculinizing or feminizing effect on our brains, or in other words, in terms of our tolerance as well. And then psychosocial influences on gender typing. So these psychosocial influences are in the reference to psychological as well as social influences in regards to this. So there are three primary psychosocial perspectives when it comes to gender typing. One, psychodynamic, I believe we know psychodynamic, then social cognitive theory, the one for Bandura and Koma with others, and then gender schema theory. Psychodynamic, Freud believed that boys came to act like boys, or girls came to act like girls via the process of identification. That process of identification that, boys tend to identify themselves with their fathers, whilst also girls with their mother, that they end up, the process of identification in terms of similarities. And then psychodynamic, it's not far from social cognitive as well, in terms of how it also looks that children learn much in terms of observational learning and or modeling and or involving modeling as well. So the fostering of gender appropriate behavior patterns also, it influences kids when they are growing. For instance, girls were given dolls once they were growing, and then they are encouraged to use those. If they tend to deviate, they will be either be punished or withdraw of affection from a guardian or a parent. And then therefore girls end up becoming like that, and they may not also, or if you find right now, it's not common to find those old members to be violent or aggressive in public, compared to the younger generation, which is let's say from 35 and below. Yeah, 35 and below. 40 and below, let's see, to be fair, 40 and below, and then 50 and above. Their reaction towards public, some, yes, individually, they may be quite aggressive in public, but due to this upbringing, that, a woman should not be that much aggressive in public unless if it's necessary, and then it's expected of men to be that aggressive. It all comes with what social cognitive, that some they experience observational learning, seeing those things happening, seeing others getting punished as well. Modeling now comes into play of, like fostering the gender appropriate patterns or behavioral patterns one has to use. And then looking at this research by Richardson, go look into this, where groups were layered, two groups of men and women, they were competing in a private or a public area, and then whoever wins was going to give someone electrical shocks. Was going to administer electrical shocks. All right. Now looking at gender schema theory. Gender schema theory, it viewed that one is knowledge of the gender schema, and one is society guides, one is assumption of gender type preferences, as well as what? Gender patterns. So like the view that one is knowledge of the gender schema, in one is society guides, one assumption. Like our societies, they carry, or they have certain portrayals that they have towards gender, and the knowledge that you have towards that society and how they explain gender is how you end up behaving in another way. Or also in another ways, by the age of 3, children have developed a sense of being male, and being female, and also being actively seek out information about their gender schema via observational learning. Schema is morely like a, what do you call it, shortcut in thinking, like a certain group of knowledge that we use. A very good example, let's say 12 midnight, you're walking in a street alone, and then you see three guys spreading in front of you, evenly spreading in the street in front of you. You can quickly you have an idea that these are churches, isn't it? Because of what? The schema that we have in terms of that activity. Or there are some certain dress code that if you see such a dress code, then you can project somebody as a thief. That is a schema. So that is in relation to what? To gender schema theory, that we carry certain knowledge in relation to certain gender, and what we do, we tend to act towards such patterns, as well as through observational learning as well, we end up seeking more information towards that gender as well, or that schema. So some of the costs of gender polarization of men should be men, women should be women, those costs may also be experienced in education, where intelligence intelligent tests which shows overall difference, no overall difference between boys and then girls, isn't it? And then we end up pushing that women should learn more of reading and then should not do of this. Whilst it becomes expensive when you're sponsoring one thing or one gender, or it becomes less productive in future when we have a backlog of what? Of a certain backlog of individuals to occupy certain positions. A very good example, going back to the times of World War I, II, some people will explain, if you remember the history was saying men, went to war and so on and so on, but due to the shortage of men back home, women were now employed in industries so that they cater for the shortages. Now, because we did gender polarization, ladies do this, men do this. And then let's say World War III has started, nuclear weapons are exploding everywhere, and the story goes on. And in terms of number, men are few. And then who will work in those industries? Who will work in construction? Even though people don't want hard jobs or hard labor jobs, but at the end of the times, people should be given equal chance for them to choose no or yes, other than to be, in future to be, to be influenced what to choose. So those are some of the costs for gender polarization, or that, and also some of the costs they end up in working environments where you find out, that range, like they say salary scale is 320, let's say, for example, $100 to $250. You see, the unfortunate part is some women end up receiving less than what other male counterpart is getting. That's another cost for also in terms of the careers for gender polarization, as well as also, people used to say because a woman is promoted, probably she's sleeping with someone. It's also because to that women were less likely to be promoted to such positions of such influence, as well as women in the business world who also employ the same behaviors as men, such as aggressiveness, may be viewed negatively. Those women who portray male traits in terms of how the society is viewing may be seen in a negative way, which also might not be the favorable outcome in terms of how they are behaving in such a manner so that they protect their business since they're doing it independently. So those are some of those things that are very much costly when we look at gender polarization as well in regards to nowadays. And it also influences in welfare, family welfare, how kids are taken care of. Nowadays, they are trying to consider or to be gender, to exercise gender equality and equity, where also men are given paternal benefits, so some is maternal benefits as well, so that both of them, they also attend to the child. Now this is the time for the questions. Anybody with a question? All right. Now there's a question: when looking into anxiety, I disagree because it seems like men exceed women, but the fact is just that women are early and at expressing themselves during anxiety, while men tend to be unexpressing when anxiety is referring to passion killing. All right. When it comes to anxiety, to mental issues, let's not circumference on the headlines which are being made today alone. But yes, as much as you have said, I will support that. But when I look at anxiety, we have to define anxiety. We may say men they may experience depression. One of the unfortunate part is all about expressing in terms of that. Coming back to those social, cultural aspects that also affect men in terms of sharing. You find out nowadays men are coming out, and those who are coming out at first they are ashamed, and then the story goes on, and then till they come out. I'll give an example about I don't know if you look into this Johnny Depp story by and then Amber Rose, that the wife was the one who first portrayed that she's being abused, and then most of the people quickly acted against Johnny Depp and later realized it was a mistake. But if you look at it, it's just only women, they express more. Remember that the women have strength more in verbal abilities as well, and you have the ability to use words, create more words, use a number of words in terms of expression. So probably that might be another nature which may also influence men in terms of issues in terms of like that. But I will rather say men experience more of depression than of anxiety, because depression and anxiety, they are similar at the same time. They're a little bit different when it comes to anxiousness. Why we say so? If you look at these issues of assertiveness, tough-mindedness, that's where the anxiety may be left aside. But also tough-mindedness may be very good nurturing ground in relation to depression as well, because one is not willing to, is not flexible to learn, which means they may think and they think and they think till to the extent where you find some, they end up killing themselves due to the pain that they feel. And then also the passion killing again comes also with that, where one is also, you know, having a depressive episodes where one is trying to look into now and future. Plus also, I believe it was an exercise that has been portrayed that men are supposed to be aggressive. Like men are just supposed to be aggressive in nature. Probably it's also another thing which also influences how men tend into passion killing. But as much as you have explained this question, you are as much as correct as much as I'm trying to explain as well. But you see now where these issues are coming in. But thank you for the question. Any other question that you may need to add on top of this question, which was quite wonderful? Whilst we are waiting for the question, assist your brothers, cousins in regards to these issues of mental health, because majority of men, they less express. Like if you find out most of the researchers, they always say, you know, a group of men is shallow in terms of being supportive. Why this tough-mindedness, competitive in nature. Men are just, you know, in competition, even though women, people, they always say women are competing among themselves, but men are just in competition in nature with life. You see how it is as well. So those are some of those things. And some of those situations are due to the aspect of people are experiencing that big, so through growing up, you know, people were observing men experiencing such scenarios. And nowadays also some men, they're thinking that that's how we are supposed to act. But also things are changing. We now have therapists, we now have counselors, as well as women are also doing jobs that they were not doing way back. Way back, men used to be taking care of the family. Now also women are taking care of the family, whilst a man maybe probably may not be sitting. So such of those things, they experience what they call, you know, that stressful condition where reality and what you know tend not to be at par, and then you're trying to adapt at the same time the system is moving another way and you are moving another way, and then it creates an incongruent situation where it creates stressful and depressive situations where one starts to nail themselves. So that's why it ends up like that, as well as I believe also when it comes to passion killing and also suicidal. That is my own opinion. That men also, to some point in time, they also suffer this issue of what do you call it? This image aspect, like my appearance. Who am I? How people are seeing me, which may end up people making drastic decisions, or quickly come to judge and then kill someone, or maybe when they get into a relationship, they want to control it and hold it to the maximum. As well as also, let's say one becomes a counselor, also look into pastoral counseling or religious counseling as well, which also look into the aspects of interventional spiritual world in terms of influencing our behavior. All right, good people, any other question? You may bring the debate on our WhatsApp group so that we see how it goes. You have a wonderful day. Stay well. Pray as many times as you can.